Chapter 61 Results. After almost more than an hour and a half, his trial came to an end. And if not for the senior team's training, which was going to start from 8:30 a.m., they were even planning to carry out a third test and a fourth test. Let's wrap up today's tests. Manager Makoto exclaimed while looking at his younger brother. Yeah, this much is enough. We've seen what we were looking for. Manager Nozomi replied while scribbling something in his notebook. And there still is match videos. We'll extract the remaining data from there. So yeah, let's conclude the trial. Nozomi added. Just as the coaches concluded the end of the trial, Hiro's mother and Mr. Musashi made their way towards the pitch. From the beginning of the trial, both of them were spectating the trial from the bench where the substitute players sat during the match. Since we still need to discuss the results of the trial with other staff members, we cannot provide you with our answers on the spot. But I can assure you that you can look forward to a good news and his future in Kawasaki. I'll definitely vouch for his signing during the meeting. Manager Makoto exclaimed with a smile on his face while talking with his mother. To prevent the power from getting misused, no single person was given the full authority to trigger the signing or transfer of any player. And thus a committee of staff members, including managers, scouts, and analysts, was set up to initiate the signing or transfer of player after analyzing the data of the targeted player for the betterment of the club. And both the senior team and the youth teams of Kawasaki Frontale Club followed the same system. Thus, despite being the head coach of U18 team of Kawasaki Frontale Club, Manager Makoto couldn't provide her with their decision right away. It's okay. We understand your situation. His mother replied in her soft voice upon hearing Manager Makoto's statement. We are in no hurry as well, since he still have more than a year left to graduate from elementary school. We'll be waiting for the good news. And thank you for your trust in my son. Saying such, she finished her sentence with a sweet smile. Thank you for your understanding, Mrs. Takahashi. Manager Makoto thanked her. And in that way, his trial for Kawasaki Frontale came to an end. July 13, 2019. At around 7 in the evening, Hiro was seated at his study table with his legs folded atop his chair. With his stationaries and textbooks scattered everywhere on the table, he was seated at the study table to study for an upcoming test. Q.7 Who discovered gravity? A. Albert Einstein. B. Sir Isaac Newton. C. Galileo Galilei. D. Thomas Edison. Since Galileo Galilei was the one who discovered telescope, and gravity is something related to space, so it must definitely be him. He mumbled after reading the questions in his textbook. The answer is C. I'm sure it's the right answer. Hurrah! Just why am I so talented? Ha ha ha. While laughing like a maniac, he began to sing his own praises. Now let's check the answer. Saying such, he flipped the page to check his answers. Q.1, Q.2. Here it is, Q.7. He mumbled while moving down his finger to the answer of question number 7. Just as he witnessed the answer, his legs, which were folded atop his chair, dropped down all of a sudden. Huh, how is the answer freaking Sir Isaac Newton? He exasperated while looking at the answer written on the textbook. Despite being a 27-year-old from inside, his general knowledge was that of a 7 or 8-year-old kid. And even back in his previous life, he hated studying. The only reason he passed school in his previous life was via cheating. Arg. Studying is damn frustrating. I'll just carry the cheat as usual. He exasperated while leaning back on his chair. Just then his phone started to ring all of a sudden. Ring, ring, ring. It's probably Akashi. He's probably calling me to ask if I read anything at all. He mumbled while leaning his head back and staring at the ceiling above his head. Arg. Whatever. Let's just answer the call. Saying such, he rose up from his chair and walked towards his drawer. Just as he pulled his drawer and picked his phone, he noticed the name of Eric on his phone screen. It's Eric, not Akashi. I wonder why Eric is calling me at this moment. Perhaps he wants to talk about the trial at Kawasaki. Since I didn't call him after the trial ended, he probably wants to inquire about the trial. Mumbling such, he picked the call. I'm sorry for not informing you about the details of the trial, Eric. I was planning to tell you about the details of the trial after reaching home. But because of the plane ride, I suffered through jet lag. And after that I forgot to call you. So I'm really sorry, Eric. Hiro kept on apologizing to Eric from the moment he picked the call, giving him absolutely no time to speak. Hiro, I've not called you to ask you about the trial. The coaches have already informed me about the results of the trials. So you don't have to worry about the trial. Eric tried to calm him down by assuring him that he didn't need to worry about the details of the trial. Huh, it's not about the trial? Hiro questioned after hearing Eric's response on the call. No, I didn't mean that. I've indeed called you to discuss about something related to Kawasaki Frontale Club, but I've not called you to inquire about the trial. Eric assured. I've called you to inform you about the results of the trial. Eric continued. The results are already out. Hiro intoned in a state of shock. Yes, the results are out. You've passed their trials, and they want to sign you, Hiro. The frequency of Eric's tone increased as he revealed him about the interest from Kawasaki Frontale Club. Yes. And as he heard about the result of the trial and Kawasaki Frontale's interest in him, he clenched his fist. Since he was still on the call, somehow he kept his lips closed and prevented himself from screaming in joy. And they're even willing to provide you with full scholarship. They are willing to cover your school fees, hostel fees, travel expenses, living expenses. But you'll have to sign a contract that'll last till your 18th birthday with the club. Eric continued. After hearing about the length of the contract, the smile on his face started to fade away. But what if I go pro? Do I need to abide by the same contract? Hiro questioned. You don't have to worry about that. If you somehow debut as a professional player before you turn 18, they'll provide you with a contract befitting of the pro. So you don't have to worry about your contracts at all. I'll handle your contracts. Eric answered. Don't worry, you'll get paid once you debut as a pro. Eric continued. So what will it be? Do you want to sign the contract? Chapter 62, On to the New City. October 30th, 2021. After spending almost an entire year in his home, he was set to depart for Kawasaki. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic which started from December of the year 2020, a nationwide lockdown was imposed. And because of that, every schools, hospitals, sports clubs, and public places had to shut their door for almost about a year. While the league games were played closed doors in an empty stadium, the youth league had to be suspended for the entirety of the 21-22 season. And because of that, his arrival at the club was also delayed. Even though he was scheduled to depart for Kawasaki right after his graduation, his departure was pushed further for more than 5 months because of COVID-19 pandemic. While he graduated from elementary school in the year 2021, he was scheduled to attend the middle school from the April of that year. However, due to the pandemic, he had to attend the classes from his home via his electronic devices for about 6 months. And the middle school which he attended online was a middle school based on Kawasaki, which was affiliated with the club. But now that the restrictions were lifted, he was on his way to join the club. Early in the morning, as the warm rays of the sun entered his room via a window of his room, the particles of dust which were invisible to naked eyes danced underneath the sunlight. Unlike the days before, his usually messy room was unusually tidy that day. With his bed sheets neatly tucked and blankets folded, his bed was empty that day even though it was only 7:30 in the morning. Usually at that time of the morning, he would still be in his bed, lying atop it, while sleeping like a pig. However, that day, he was nowhere to be seen in his room. The posters of the players which he idolized were still hung on the walls. The medals and certificates he accumulated throughout his elementary school years were proudly displayed at his cupboard. Dressed in a slim-fitted blue jeans and white t-shirt, his outfit was completed by overlaying a light green-colored varsity jacket over his plain white t-shirt and a Nike Jordan 1 Retro, high pine green beneath his feet. While he didn't pay any attention towards his attire before, he had paid extra attention towards his attire that day because he wanted to leave a good impression on his new teammates with whom he was going to share his accommodation with during his time at the club, and he didn't want them to see him as some kind of country bumpkin. That's why he had spent almost an entire day scavenging through the internet in search of trendy attires which were trending at that moment. Just as he finished tying his shoelaces, he stood up and began to dust his clothes. And as he turned around and lifted his gaze towards his mother, he found her with eyes full of tears. Why are you crying, Mom? I'm only leaving for Kawasaki. I'm not leaving the country, you know. And I'll be back for every holiday. Hiro mumbled while stretching his hands towards her face to wipe away the tears from her eyes. I know. It's just I've never been away from you before. His mother replied in her crying voice. Don't worry, Mom. I'll be all right. He exclaimed with a smile on his face. Hearing him exclaim such, she casted her gaze towards him. Upon seeing the smile on his face, she felt at ease. She then wiped away the tears from her eyes and looked at him. Actually, that's what I'm worried about. You never wake up on time, and you're always late. I wonder how would they deal with your laziness. She teased him with a slight grin on her face. Hearing her teasing words, all of a sudden, he got flustered. Mom, he intoned while raising his voice. Just then his father opened the main door and interrupted them. Hiro, we're leaving, he mumbled while entering the house. And just as he entered and casted his gaze towards the mother and son duo, he paused while witnessing their smiling faces. Hiro and his mother were cheerfully laughing. What's up with you two? Did I interrupt you two? He questioned while looking at their smiling faces. No, we were just talking about something with each other. His mother replied with a smiling face. Her response left him dumbfounded. Takashi couldn't understand the reason behind their smiles. Oh, okay. Then say your bye to your mother, Hiro. The cab is waiting outside, so we'll need to leave ASAP. Takashi mumbled while lifting Hiro's suitcase. Not wanting to pry in their discussion, Takashi acted as if he wasn't interested in their discussion. And just as he exited the house with Hiro's suitcase, Hiro spoke. I'll be going, Mom. Take care of yourself. Don't worry too much about me, and don't nag Dad too much. She nodded her head. And when did I ever nag your dad? She intoned with her brows arched and eyes narrowed at him. It was clear from her facial expression that she wasn't pleased with Hiro's poor choice of words. Sensing trouble, he immediately changed his sentence. No. What I meant was forgive Dad if you ever find him sneakily drinking beer late in the night. Huh, he drinks beer sneakily late in the night when I'm sleeping. She intoned while looking at him with her eyes wide open. Let him come home after the trip. I'll take his classes. She whispered underneath her breath. Sorry, Dad. You need to become the scapegoat of her wrath. If I didn't tell her about this, then she would have definitely started to nag at me, he thought as he noticed her face turning red with anger. Hiro, hurry up. His dad yelled while calling out his name from outside the door. Yes, Dad, I'm coming. He yelled back as well. Okay, Mom. I'll be going then. Take care of your health. Bye. Bye. Saying such, he threw himself towards her and locked his arms around her back. You too, son. Take care of yourself. I'm gonna miss you so much. The tone of her voice changed as she wrapped her arms around him and resonated to his feelings. After a moment of tight hugging, he loosened his grip from her and retracted his step. She too loosened her grip and set him free. And as he retracted his step while keeping his gaze fixated at her, he suddenly paused his movement just as he reached the door. He then gently waved his hands towards her while revealing a smile on his face and said, Bye. Bye, Mom. I'll be back after making a name for myself. She too waved her hand towards him with a smile on her face while standing straight at the same place. He then left the house and walked towards the cab. In front of the cab, his father was waiting for him. And just as he reached the cab, his father opened the door of the cab for him. He then hopped on the car and casted a final glance at his house. He noticed his mother, who had followed after him, standing in front of the door. I'll be back, honey. His father spoke as he hopped on the cab as well. Chapter 63, Youth Hostel. Inside a 3-storied building which was located at a certain distance away from the Kawasaki Todoroki Stadium, 2 people were seen talking to each other while sitting at a table in a large hall with lots of dining tables and kitchenwares. Isn't the club planning on recruiting any new player this year? A tall guy with a lanky body spoke. I'm not sure about it either. The club hasn't organized any trial for this year, so maybe no new player will join us this time. The other guy with a small rounded face, who was seated opposite to the previous guy, replied while grabbing a piece of fried shrimp from his plate with his chopsticks. Because of the pandemic, the club hadn't organized any trial for the year 21-22. And even for the U18 team, the club had simply decided to promote the previous players from U15 team. Both of the 2 guys who were seated at the right corner table in the cafeteria had a bowl full of rice, a bowl full of vegetable soup, and a plate full of fried shrimp placed in front of them. Just then another guy with somewhat tan skin and lanky body made his appearance towards the table where the 2 guys were seated while carrying a tray full of the same food as that of the 2 guys in front. Yo, Hirado. Yo, Takakazu. What are you guys talking about? Saying such in an enthusiastic voice, he placed the tray full of food atop the table and sat down. Takakazu Yokotaro was the name of the tall guy, and Hirado Hayakakai was the name of the other guy with a round-shaped face. Oh, it's you, Shun. We were talking about this year's trial. Hirado replied while turning his head towards Shun, who came out of nowhere and sat beside him. So it's about the trial, huh? Shun mumbled while stuffing a chunk of rice in his mouth. Since the club had canceled the trial for this year, shouldn't we face less competition for the spot in U18 team this year? Maybe this year we might even get a chance to be promoted to the U18 team as well. Hirado intoned, feeling all excited. As mentioned by Hirado, the cancellation of trial by the club that year had indeed increased their probability to rise to the U18 team. Since they had to compete among themselves and not with other new players, the probability to rise to the U18 team was rather high that year. No. Before talking about the promotion, you should probably work on losing your weight first, Hirado. Shun mumbled with a straight face while stuffing his mouth with food. Hara. Yeah, he's right. Takakazu laughed as he heard Shun's words. Hirado, who was grabbing a shrimp with his chopsticks, increased his grip all of a sudden and tore apart the shrimp into 2 pieces as he heard Shun's remarks of him. A player should talk with skills, not with body, Shun. Hirado exasperated. He then abruptly turned his head towards Takakazu, who was sitting in front of him, and spoke in fury. And what are you laughing at, you bald monk? As mentioned by Hirado, Takakazu had a clean-shaven head and somewhat rounded face like a monk. Hirado, who also happened to have a rounded face, was somewhat overweight. With a rather small height of 4 feet 4 inches as compared to the 2 other guys seated alongside him, he was somewhat of a shorty. However, in terms of footballing talents, he was much more talented than the other 2 guys. Well, at least I don't look like a freaking Squirtle. Ha ha ha. Takakazu laughed while mocking Hirado's height. And what exactly have you pulled off by being a 5 feet 5 inches central defender? The only thing that you're good at is winning the aerial ball. You do remember the time when Sawamura from Yokohama F. Marinos nutmegged you for more than 5 times in one single match, right? Hirado began to dug out the past mistakes of Takakazu after listening to his taunts. And as such, they got into a quarrel after the appearance of Shun. While they were arguing with each other, Shun kept on stuffing the food in his mouth while enjoying the show which he had orchestrated in front of him. After a moment of insulting each other, they came to a realization. Why exactly are we arguing with each other? Hirado questioned. Exactly. Wasn't it Shun who gaslighted you? Takakazu nodded his head while pointing his finger towards Shun, who was seated beside Hirado with mouth full of fried shrimps. I only said Hirado to lose weight. After that it was all you guys. Shun mumbled with a straight face as if their arguments had nothing to do with him. Well, yeah, he's right too. Takakazu mumbled after hearing him. He couldn't put the blame on Shun, since what he had said was all true. Unable to put the blame on Shun, both of them silently turned their attention towards their plate. And as they turned their attention towards the plate, they found their shrimps missing from the plate. Realizing that they have been played by Shun, they abruptly turned their head towards him to vent their anger. However, at that time, Shun rose from his seat and spoke. "I'm done, guys. I'll be leaving now. You guys can take your time." Saying such, he began to walk away, as if nothing had happened. Takakazu and Hiro, who had turned towards him to vent their anger, were left dumbfounded by his actions. "What just happened?" Hiro questioned while staring blankly at his plate. "Nothing much. We got played by him. While we were busy arguing with each other, he ate the shrimps from our plate, leaving us with only rice and vegetable soup." Takakazu replied with a dumbfounded face while staring blankly at his empty plates. After about 2.5 hour plane ride, Hiro landed at the airport of Kawasaki with his father. "Should we head to the hostel right away, or do you want to stop at a restaurant to eat something first?" His father questioned him while exiting the airport. Since he had already been there previously, the club hadn't provided him with a guide that time around. "Let's eat something first, and after that we'll head to the hostel," Hiro replied after a brief second of thinking. "Then wait here for a minute. I'll go look for a cab." Saying such, his father walked towards the parking lot where the cabs were usually parked. "I'm finally here. I'm finally one step closer to my goal," he mumbled while looking at the bright blue sky, filled with fluffy white clouds. The sky was unusually bright that day. With the sun at its zenith, the ambience around him was rather cold that day. Despite the sun being at its zenith, the temperature wasn't as hot as it used to be during the month of June, July. "It's not as hot as it used to be. I guess the winter is approaching," he mumbled while keeping his gaze fixated at the sky above. "The days will only get colder now. Nonetheless, I must keep the fire inside me ablaze." Chapter 64 Youth Hostel 2. At around 4 in the evening, he arrived in front of the hostel gate with his father. "So are we here?" his father questioned as the cab stopped in front of the hostel gate. "Seems like it," Hiro replied while looking at his smartphone. He was using Google Map to guide the cab driver towards their destination. Despite visiting the city about 2 years ago, he had only visited the main stadium during his visit at that time, and thus, he himself had absolutely no idea about the location of hostel. Unaware of the location of the hostel, he even thought of visiting the stadium first. However, because the senior team had a match that day, he was forced to look for the hostel instead. "But just in case, let's ask that guy over there," he mumbled while pointing at an old man dressed in a guard uniform, seated at a chair in front of the metal gate with a wooden guard stick in his hand. Saying such, both of them hopped out of the cab and walked towards the old man to ask him if they were in the correct destination. However, as they reached the place where the old man was seated, they found him drowsing in his chair. While seated at the chair, his head was sinking to his chest slowly while his eyes were struggling to keep him awake. Would it be all right to question him in such state? Hiro whispered while looking at the drowsy state of the old man in front. "We don't have any other option. The cab driver only knows about the way to the stadium, and there's literally nobody around us except the man in front. So let's just ask him quickly and leave," his father whispered back while looking at the face of old man who was struggling to keep him awake. As mentioned by his father, besides them, the cab driver and the man in front, there were absolutely nobody present there at that moment. The surrounding around them was as empty as space. And the hostel was located in quite an unpopulated place as well. So even though he was somewhat hesitant to disturb the man in front, he reluctantly decided to question the old man. Excuse me, sir," Hiro muttered in a soft voice. The old man didn't respond at all and only kept on swinging his head up and down. Did he not hear me? Or is he simply pretending to be asleep? He thought after witnessing the unresponsive attitude of the old man. "Hello? Excuse me, sir. Can you tell us about the location of the hostel of Kawasaki Frontale's youth team?" Agitated by the unresponsiveness of the old man, he yelled at the top of his voice. Upon hearing the loud voice of Hiro, the old man abruptly opened his eyes and swung his guard stick at Hiro. Hiro quickly leaped back to avoid the stick. Since Hiro wasn't standing close enough to him, he didn't get hit by the guard stick. However, the scenario would have been completely different if he had been standing close to the guard. Who are you?" he stammered while pointing his guard stick towards Hiro. We're sorry for disturbing you. We were looking for the hostel of the Kawasaki Frontale's youth club, but we couldn't find its location, and there wasn't anybody else around us beside you. That's why we wanted to ask you for directions. So we're really sorry about disturbing you during your sleep." His father apologized while trying to explain the old man about their circumstances. Upon hearing his father's apology, the old man suddenly burst out in laughter. "Ha ha. You're asking for the direction of the apple vendor while sitting underneath the apple tree yourself. But we're not asking for the direction to the apple tree. We're asking for the direction to the hostel of the Kawasaki Frontale's youth team," Hiro blurted out dumbfoundedly. He didn't understand the meaning behind his words. "Sigh. That's not what he meant, Hiro. What he mean is that we're already in front of the hostel." His father mumbled in a low voice after releasing a deep sigh. "That's right. You're already standing at the front gate of the hostel of Kawasaki Frontale's youth team. Look in front. The hostel is just past this metal gates." The old man lowered his guard stick and exclaimed while pointing his stick behind him. Great, we're here. Let's go and get your luggage. His father intoned after hearing the exclaims of the guard. Both of them then walked towards the cab to unload Hiro's luggage. Since his father was going to spend a night at the city hotel, he requested the cab owner to keep the cab on standby for a while. First, they asked me about the direction to the hostel. And now when I tell them that the hostel is right in front of them, they walk away without telling anything. What kind of strange people are these two? The guard thought while looking at them leave towards the cab without saying anything to him. The guard was left dumbfounded by their actions. Now why are they coming back with luggage? He mumbled upon seeing them returning back with luggage. What are they planning on doing? The hostel is off limits for normal people. He continued to stare at them. Sir, you can't enter the hostel without permission. The guard rose up from his seat and blocked their way inside, while they were making their way towards the hostel with Hiro's luggage. Hasn't the club already informed you about my arrival? Hiro questioned while pausing in front of the guard. The club has indeed informed me about the arrival of a new player, but I need to confirm first that the mentioned player is you. So do you have any sort of confirmation that you could provide me? The guard asked him for confirmation. All right, sorry about that. I forgot to hand you the letter provided by the club. Hara. Saying such, he took out a letter from his bag and handed it over to the guard in front. He had completely forgot about the letter of enrollment provided by the club. Eric had specially reminded him multiple times on the phone to hand over the enrollment letter to the hostel guard before making his way inside the hostel. But because of the excitement, he had completely forgot about his words. After taking the enrollment letter from his hand, the guard looked at him with suspicious eyes. Sorry for forgetting to hand over the letter to you, he replied meekly after noticing his gaze full of suspicion towards him. Chapter 65 No Time to Rest. After verifying his enrollment letter, the guard finally opened the gate and permitted him to enter the hostel. Do you know where do I need to go to inquire about my room? Hiro turned his head back towards the guard and questioned him just as he was about to enter the hostel. You can head to either of the coach's office to inquire about your room. Their offices are just opposite to each other at the right end of the first floor. The guard replied. Thank you for the information. He thanked the guard and entered the hostel. Accompanied by his father, he was finally inside the compound of the Kawasaki Frontale's youth team. The huge 3-storied hostel building, which was painted in black and blue, was just right in front of his eyes. To his right was 2 normal-sized football pitches separated by a tall mesh fence at the either side of the 2 pitches with a path in between which led towards the stands. And both of the pitches were surrounded by a metal mesh fence to prevent the ball from going astray. Each of the 2 football pitches had floodlights installed in each and every corner of the pitch. While both the grounds even consisted a stand which could host at least about 100 people at the far right side of the pitch, the thing that mesmerized him the most was the training equipment used by the players on the field. While the goalkeepers in the pitch were being bombarded with powerful shots from an advanced ball shooting machine, other players aside from the goalkeepers were forced to sprint while being tied with a tire behind their backs. Just from the glance at the players' faces, one could easily tell that they were struggling from the intensity of the training. The pitch near to the gate belonged to the U15 team, and the pitch closer to hostel building belonged to the U18 team. To his left was a huge warehouse where the training equipments were stored. Moving along the left side at the same line, closer to the hostel building, was a huge gym. Damn, the youth training facility of Kawasaki Frontale is much bigger than what I had expected. It's just like those training facility at European clubs. Takashi mumbled in awe upon witnessing the majestic infrastructures of the youth training facility of Kawasaki Frontale Club. Indeed, it's much bigger than my imagination as well, Hiro replied while making his way towards the hostel building. Just then while walking towards the hostel building, he heard a familiar voice calling his name. The voice was coming from the pitch of U15 team. Turning back to address to the call, he paused his movement and turned his head towards the U15 pitch. The one who was calling him was Manager Nozomi. Oh great, it's Manager Nozomi. Now I don't need to go to his office to inquire about my room. He mumbled upon witnessing the sight of Manager Nozomi who was waving his hands, gesturing him to head towards him. Dad, he's Manager Nozomi, the guy I talked to you about before. He's the U15 manager of Kawasaki Frontale Club. Hiro reintroduced Manager Nozomi to his father. Oh, so he's the infamous 60 crosses guy you mentioned about. How was he even able to kick the ball non-stop for 60 times with that fragile body and at that age? Takashi mumbled while narrowing his gaze towards Manager Nozomi, who was waving his hands from the sidelines of the U15 pitch. Dad, let's head there and ask him about my room number. Saying such, Hiro began to walk towards the U15 pitch. Hiro, my star boy, you're finally here. Manager Nozomi intoned with a wide grin on his face while looking at Hiro. And this here must be your father, right? Hiro nodded his head. He's my father, Takashi Takahashi. Hello, Mr. Takahashi. It's a pleasure to meet you. Manager Nozomi turned his attention towards his father and greeted him while extending his hands forward for a handshake. Takashi took his hand and shook hands with him. The pleasure is all mine, Manager Nozomi. I'll be entrusting my son to you, so please look after him. You don't need to worry about that, Mr. Takahashi. It's my job to look after him after all. And not only him, It's my job to look after all these players who are aspiring to become a pro. Manager Nozomi exclaimed while swinging his arms around the field, pointing his finger to all the players in the field. Hara, that's right. Then thank you in advance for taking care of my son. Takashi chuckled upon witnessing his behavior. Did he swallow a hallucinating mushroom? Or did he smoke the grass? He wasn't like this when we met for the first time. With his brows arched and eyes narrowed, he began to stare at Manager Nozomi, looking somewhat perplexed. Manager Nozomi, who didn't talk much during his first meeting, was unusually blabbering a lot at that time around while chatting with his father. Noticing such a drastic change in his personality, he couldn't stop himself from thinking if he was on some kind of drugs. Are you ready to get into action, Hiro? Manager Nozomi shifted his gaze towards him and asked him all of a sudden. Right now? He replied, feeling all confused. Yes, right now? Or are you not feeling well? Nozomi questioned with a poker face. Huh, he wants me to step into the field right away? Is he testing my mentality? Is he testing my determination? Several thoughts started to emerge in his mind after hearing Manager Nozomi's sentence. No, sir. I'll get changed right away. His eyes glowed with a sense of determination. Smack. Good. That's what I wanted to hear from you. Nozomi smacked his back gently with his left hand and raised his right hand towards him, giving him a thumbs up. But wait. First we need to find your room and do something about your luggage. His father interrupted. Ah yes. That's right. I totally forgot about that. Hara. Nozomi burst into laughter all of a sudden. Climb up the stairs and walk straight towards the right hallway. You'll see a number 19 room there. That's your room number. Just place your luggage there and come to the field with your cleats. Just who is he? A new player? But wasn't the trial canceled for this year? Hiro mumbled while looking at the sidelines where Manager Nozomi, Hiro, and his father were conversing with each other. By the looks of it, he does seem like a new player. Takakazu, who was just beside him, mumbled. Humph. Maybe he got in through some kind of personal connection. Hiro intoned while preparing himself to launch forward. Since all the players in the field were in the middle of the training, they were not permitted to stop until the coach's command. I bet he's just a mediocre player. Hup. Hiro mumbled before making his run. The opposite end of the restraint band, which was tied in their waist, was tied with a huge tire. With the opposite end of the restraint band tied in a tire, they were made to sprint with the tire behind their back. Chapter 66, A Match on First Day. After making a short trip to the room he was assigned, he returned back to the field with his cleats. While he was about to step inside the field, his father, who had completed his purpose of his trip by accompanying him to the hostel, was preparing to bid his farewell to his son. I must leave now, Hiro. Takashi mumbled while pausing in front of the door of the U15 pitch. Upon hearing him, Hiro, who was about to enter the pitch, paused as well. He then turned around and casted his glance at his father. Can't you stay here for a little longer? Hiro pleaded while looking at him. He wanted him to witness his first training session with a professional youth team. Unfortunately, I can't, Hiro. Remember, the cab driver is waiting for my arrival outside the gate, and I can't make him wait more. Takashi slightly shook his head and refused his plea. Hearing his reply, Hiro lowered his gaze and drooped his shoulders. Upon witnessing his son's stooped posture, Takashi stretched his arms forward and put his hands on top of Hiro's shoulder. Just as he placed his hands on his shoulder, Hiro lifted his head and turned his gaze towards his father's face. I know you're going to do well. I believe in you, my son. Plus, you'll be surrounded with all these amazing players. And you're finally walking the path of your choice. So please don't give me that pitiful expression. Takashi mumbled with a smile on his face while looking him in the eyes. So please take care of yourself. Me and your mother will always be supporting you. Saying such, Takashi pulled him closer and wrapped his arms around him. You've already grown so tall. He mumbled under his breath while embracing him. Back in his previous life, he couldn't experience such moments with his father because of his untimely death. But because of his choices, the future had changed. I'll be all right, Dad. So please take care of yourself as well. Hiro mumbled with a smile while tightening his grip around Takashi's back. They continued to hug each other for a while. And just as both of them loosened their grips, Hiro chuckled. You should carry a bouquet of roses before you get home tomorrow. You'll need it. Saying such, he stormed towards the pitch. Takashi, who didn't understand the meaning behind his words, was left dumbfounded at his place. His eyes blinking rapidly, Takashi stood frozen at his place, watching his son fade into the pitch filled with players with a stupefied look on his face. After staring at him blankly for a while, he then left the compound and walked outside of the gate. As Hiro approached Manager Nozomi with his cleats, Manager Nozomi handed him a pair of jersey and a training bib. Go get changed. There's a changing room inside that warehouse. Nozomi instructed him to get changed, while pointing his finger at the warehouse. As instructed by Manager Nozomi, he ran towards the warehouse and came back after getting changed into the jersey and training bib provided by Manager Nozomi. Follow me. Saying such, Manager Nozomi walked towards the middle of the pitch. Okay, everyone stop what you are doing and gather here for a second. Nozomi yelled while standing at the kickoff spot. Upon hearing his command, all of the players stopped their training and started to gather around the manager, forming a circle. Who is he? A new player? But I thought the trial was canceled this year. and I didn't even see him in previous trials. Was he with you in your batch? The players began to gossip among themselves while gathering around the manager. Silence. Everyone pay attention now. I want to introduce all of you to your new teammate, Nozomi announced. Hearing his announcement, everybody stopped gossiping. And as they stopped talking, the pitch which was filled with gossiping noises of the players got silent all of a sudden. And as he got the attention of the players, he turned his head towards Hiro and spoke. Go on, introduce yourself to your new teammates. For the next 2 minutes the stage is all yours. Hiro then stepped a little bit forward and began to introduce himself in a loud voice. Hello everyone. I'm Takahashi Hiro, a 12-year-old attacking midfielder from Tokushima Prefecture. And I'm sure that a lot of you would be questioning about my arrival. But rest assured, I too have earned my spot in this team fair and square, after passing the trial set by Manager Makoto and Manager Nozomi. Isn't that right, Manager Nozomi? After introducing himself, he finished his sentence with a question while turning his head towards Manager Nozomi. So you're good with words too, huh? Nozomi thought, while revealing a slight grin on his face, after hearing his introduction. Nozomi then stepped forward a little and paused to clear his throat. And as he cleared his throat, he began to speak. Indeed, just as he mentioned, he did pass our trials. So don't have any negative ideas about his arrival. Just like you all, he has earned his spot in the team with his own efforts. While Manager Nozomi was speaking, Hirato and Takakazu, who were behind their backs, were gossiping with each other in a low voice. Seems like you're wrong, Hirato. Coach Nozomi said that he came here after giving a trial. They could be telling lies to divert the public opinions. Nobody from the previous trial recognizes him after all. So who knows, he might have not undergone any trials. Hirato whispered while narrowing his eye towards Hiro. It was clear from the manner of his speech that Hiro didn't appear soothing to Hirato. Hirato was unusually cautious of Hiro. Since Hiro was the only new player joining them that year, and he also played the same position that of Hirato, Hirato couldn't help himself from being wary of him. Everybody get along well with him. Shun Yabuzo, since he'll be sharing the room with you, help him to get familiar with the surrounding, okay? Hiro was sharing his room with Shun, the tan-skinned guy with spiky straight hair. I'll do as you say, coach. Shun yelled. Following Shun's voice, Hiro, who was curious about his roommate, turned his head right towards Shun. Why do I always get stuck with spiky hair people? Hiro thought, after noticing the appearance of Shun. Okay, then everybody, let's continue our training with a mini-game. After finishing his announcement, Nozomi decided to play a mini-game. Let's play a mini-game between the players with and without the training bibs. And don't you dare take this match lightly, as I'll be deciding the players for the Sunday's friendly match against Chiba Middle School from this match. Manager Nozomi completed his sentence with a reminder. The players with the training bibs were the reserves, and the players without the training bibs were the starting players. Arg, those starters are monsters. How can we compete against them? And we also have to look out for this newbie. It's like telling us to go and lose the game. One of the player in the reserve team complained. Chapter 67 Ostracized. After he heard about the sudden announcement of the match, Hiro couldn't stop himself from staring at Manager with his eyes wide open. At most, he had predicted to start training with the team right away. But just as Manager Nozomi made the announcement of the match, he felt betrayed by the manager. By announcing a match out of nowhere, he completely deprived him the time he needed to bond with his teammates. And for a playmaker whose main job is to organize and control a team's attacking play, communication is very crucial. But by depriving him of the opportunity to bond with his teammates, he basically was giving him a handicap. What? A match on my first day? What is he thinking about? Has the coach gone mad? While staring at Manager Nozomi, several thoughts began to surface in his mind. Neither did he knew about the names of his teammates, nor did he knew about their playstyles. He was going to play a match with complete strangers. The sudden match announced by Manager Nozomi left him completely baffled. The match was completely unfair to him. While he was staring at the manager, Nozomi turned his head towards Hiro and asked him with a slight smile on his face. You can start, right? Or do you want to stay at the bench for a while? Upon hearing such questions coming out from the mouth of the manager, he felt mocked. He felt like being challenged, as if the manager was intentionally challenging him to showcase his talent despite the handicap placed upon him. Huh, is he for serious? Is he belittling me? Is he telling me that I can't play well without relying on my teammates? If it is so, then bring it on, you son of a dog. He thought to himself while staring at Nozomi's face. No, sir. I can start right away. He replied with a smile on his face, while clenching his fist. Good. Nozomi mumbled and turned around to arrange the team. And as such, he began to arrange the players for both the teams. The selection of the players for the team without the training bibs went very smoothly. However, the selection for the starting players for the team with the training bib proved to be extremely strenuous because of the large pool of players playing in the reserve team. Compared to the 11 players of starting team, there were 15 players in the reserve team. And among those 15 players, 5 players were also the regular substitutes of the starting team. Altogether, there were 26 players playing for the U15 team of Kawasaki Frontale Club. And each year, many of the graduating players who wouldn't get promotion to the U18 team would have to leave the club. Just as the coach finished announcing the starting players for both the teams, One of the player who played as the substitute for the starting team burst out on the scene after getting replaced by Hiro. Why is he selected? I play as a substitute for the starting team, and now I'm getting substituted by a completely new player in the reserve team as well. He exasperated while expressing his frustration of getting left behind in the bench. If it was any other normal matches, he wouldn't have complained to the coach. But since that match also decided the roster for the upcoming match against Chiba Middle School, he wasn't willing to let go of that opportunity as well. And also it was his last year at the U15 team. Thus he had to seize every opportunity that came along the way to appeal for his promotion. Since Hiro was new to the team, he couldn't say anything to Kota Yui, despite getting his finger pointed towards him. I do feel bad for him, but I have to prove my worth as well. And I'm sure the coach has picked the team based on the talent. If he was more skilled than me, then the coach would have picked him over me. So sorry dude, you can only blame yourself for your lack of talent. He thought while standing straight without reacting to his taunts. Kota Yui, do you have problem with my arrangements? Manager Nozomi mumbled while giving him cold stares. Upon hearing Nozomi's words, he couldn't say anything at all. He simply remained frozen at his place, completely speechless. Since the coach's decision was absolute in the club, no player was permitted to speak against him. Talking back to the coach was simply like rebelling against the coach's decision. And Kawasaki Frontale Club's youth team, whose motto was to nurture the players under strict discipline, didn't tolerate those kinds of players who talked back to the coach. Since undisciplined players were the ones who'd create most of the troubles for the club, they taught their youth player from young age to be disciplined and respectful towards the coach. Answer me, Kota Yui. Are you unsatisfied with my arrangements? Manager Nozomi erupted all of a sudden. No, sir, Kota replied while shaking his head. From outside, it seemed like he had completely accepted the decision of the manager. But just from looking at his facial expression, it was clear that he wasn't satisfied with the coach's decision. Okay, then we'll start the game within 5 minutes. Go and loosen your body. Saying such, he dismissed the teams after announcing the starting players for both the teams. Great, I should take this opportunity to bond with the team. He thought after he heard about the 5-minute warm-up time. But before he could even approach other players, Kota Yui, the guy whom Hiro replaced, began to gaslight other players against him. You guys saw how coach favored him, right? Without even training with the team, he has already given him the opportunity to start. Now imagine if he even performs decently, the coach will put him on the starting team. And if that happens, he'll only snatch our rightful spot because of the coach's favor. So do you guys want this newbie to snatch our rightful spot? Kota Yui began to gaslight other players and turn them against him. You're the striker of our team, right? He approached one of the player with slightly tanned skin and short hair. Just as he approached him, that player suddenly started to dribble the ball and moved away from him. He ignored his presence as if he wasn't even there to begin with. What a strange fellow, Hiro mumbled upon witnessing his actions. He then turned his head towards other players. But almost everyone in his team gave him cold shoulders. He wasn't aware of the ill rumors made by Kota Yui. Finally, he approached Kota Yui, despite his unwillingness to approach him because of the earlier dissatisfaction and some suspicion. Chapter 68 Starters versus Reserves. The scene of him getting ignored by the players of the reserve team was noticed by the players from the starting team. However, instead of helping him, they were enjoying his sufferings and making fun of him. Look at that newbie struggling to make friends. One of the starting players chuckled while pointing his finger towards Hiro, who was getting ignored by the reserve players one after the other. Seems like he'll be struggling a lot in this match. Another guy close to the previous guy joined in on the fun of watching him suffer. See, I told you. Nobody in the team from the previous batches know of him. I'm sure he entered the club via some underhanded way. Hiro, who was stretching his legs, mumbled while looking at him with eyes full of disdain. Since Hiro had been included on the starting lineup of the opposing team, Hiro too was somewhat unhappy about the coach's decision, just like Kota Yui. Takakazu, who was warming up beside him, didn't reply anything and continued to look at Hiro as if he was trying to remember something. After a moment of silence, he finally opened his mouth. But doesn't he look a bit familiar to you? Yeah, he must have appeared in your dream, right? Ha ha ha. Hiro chuckled and shrugged his remarks. Takakazu didn't react to his joke and kept his eyes fixated at Hiro. I'm sure I have seen him somewhere before. Takakazu whispered under his breath. Since every player in the team were playing for themselves, the old players in the team often ignored the new players to reduce the competition. As a result, the new players would often get ostracized in the beginning, which would indirectly affect their performances and result in the reduction of their game time. Hiro, being the only new guy in the team that year, provided the old players even greater opportunity to ostracize him, since there wouldn't be any other new players to complain about their disdainful acts. Having been ignored by almost every player whom he approached in the pitch, he thought of approaching Kota Yui, the guy who was the center of the commotion which took place a moment ago. Hey, I know that you're upset about coach's decision of playing me instead of you. But do you know why these players are acting so weird? After getting ignored by almost every player whom he approached, he was somewhat suspicious of Kota Yui. However, he wasn't willing to ask him directly. Thus, he asked him indirectly if he was the culprit behind the behaviors of the other players towards him. Don't take it to your heart. They're like this to every new player. Since the spot for the place at the U18 team is very limited, they're just wary of you. And they're probably avoiding you to minimize the competition. Kota Yui replied with a smile on his face. As if the behavior of the other players had nothing to do with him, he pushed the blame on the competition. Just play like you do normally. And if you're talented enough, they won't ignore you anymore. He sniggered and walked outside the pitch, towards the sidelines. So you were the ringmaster who was orchestrating this act after all. Hiro whispered under his breath after confirming his suspicion while watching him leave. Beep. Just then Manager Nozomi blew the whistle and signaled everybody to assume their positions. After that, all the players started to scatter around the field. However, Hiro, who was still new to the team, didn't know what to do. He stood still at his place. Why are you standing still? The game has begun. Go assume your position. Manager Nozomi mumbled while walking closer towards him. And just as he reached him, he paused his movement and stood straight in front of him. But you haven't instructed me about the formation yet. So what formation are we playing? Hiro questioned. You're right. I forgot to tell you about the formation. Hara. Nozomi chuckled after hearing his question. We'll be playing in a 4-2-1-3 formation. And you'll be the only attacking midfielder of your team. Did you get it? Or do I need to show you the formation on the whiteboard? Nozomi questioned. No, sir. Saying such, he stormed towards his position. And after everybody assumed their respective position, Manager Nozomi commanded a middle-aged man in a blue tracksuit to referee the match. The middle-aged man whom Manager Nozomi appointed as a referee for the ongoing match was one of the coaching staff of the youth team. Aside from the appointed referee, there were 3 other coaches in the field next to the U15 pitch. Altogether, there were 5 coaches, including Manager Nozomi and Manager Makoto, who oversaw the training and development of the youth players of Kawasaki Frontale Club. While Manager Nozomi stood in the sidelines, the referee looked at his stopwatch and blew the whistle, commencing the start of the game. The reserve team started the kickoff with a long pass to the defender. Since Manager Nozomi had warned everybody to take the match seriously, the opposing team didn't slack behind. From the get-go, they pressed aggressively for the ball. Even before the start of the match, his teammates had already lost their will to play the match. And after witnessing the aggressive pressing of the opposing forwards, the players of his team who had admitted defeat even before the start of the match got even more anxious. At just 1 minute 37 seconds, the defenders in his team gave away the ball to the opposing player and lost the position because of a mispass. Just as the opposing striker pressed forward for the ball, the defender with the ball blindly passed the ball towards the right back without taking note of the opposing winger. The opposing left winger, who was waiting for the defender to pass the ball towards the right back, ran towards the right back and intercepted the pass. After giving away the ball, he stood for Zen at his place for a while, hesitating whether to intercept the winger or mark the center forward who had costed him that mistake. He stood still while juggling between those 2 options. Chapter 69, Wrong Opponent. While the defender who costed them to lose the position was juggling between his choices, the opposing left winger moved the ball forward without stopping. The right back, who was close to the left winger, chased after him. The right back, with his speed, eventually managed to catch up to the winger. Despite being much faster than the opposing left winger, he wasn't as skilled as the opposing winger. Just as he tried to intercept the ball, the opposing winger performed a body feint and got past him, leaving him behind in dust. The winger then began to cut in towards the goalpost. Finally, after making his choice, the center-back from before who costed them to lose the position of the ball chased after the left winger, leaving behind his mark. Upon seeing the incoming defender, the opposing winger passed the ball towards the center forward, who wasn't marked by any player. After getting a pass inside the penalty box just in front of the goalpost, he tapped the ball inside the net without any difficulties. His team's keeper couldn't even react to that play from the opposition. At just 1 minute 50 seconds, his team conceded a simple goal. Just what kind of defending was that? Even Akashi is a better defender than him, Hiro mumbled to himself after witnessing the mistakes of the defender who costed them the goal. Sorry, my bad. The defender from before apologized with a smile. Even after making that mistake, he wasn't even a tad bit sorry about his mistake. In fact, he was smiling after costing them the goal. Neither the defender was sorry about his mistake, nor were his teammates angry about that goal. They shrugged the goal as if the outcome of the game was already expected. With that first goal from the opposing team, the score of the game was team without training bib 1 and team with training bib 0. His teammates' lousy performance continued for almost entire first half of the game. It didn't take them long enough to concede the second goal. They conceded the second goal at 13th minute of the game from the blunder of the keeper. From the other half of the pitch, Takakazu played a long ball towards their half of the pitch after receiving the ball from their keeper. Naturally, it was his team's defender who caught the ball. But even so, the opposing forward relentlessly continued to chase after the ball. Sensing the opposing forward charging from behind, the defender who caught the ball passed the ball back to the keeper. Even so, the opposing forward didn't stop chasing after the ball. The keeper to whom the ball was passed got anxious upon witnessing the sight of the opposing forward charging towards him like a bull. The keeper quickly cleared the ball away without watching the position of his teammates. Unfortunately, the random clear from the keeper ended up at the feet of Hirato. After getting the ball, Hiro dribbled the ball forward towards the post. Just as he reached closer towards the goalpost, he shot the ball from outside the box. Since their keeper was out of position, the keeper couldn't react to the shot, and the ball landed precisely at the top right corner of the post. That's how they conceded the second goal, just after a little more than 11 minutes since conceding the first goal. At 27th minute, they conceded another goal, making the score 3-0. With only 3 minutes remaining before the first half, his team was already losing the game with a score of 3-0. Beep. With that third goal from the opposing team, the game continued with their kickoff. With the blow of the referee's whistle, the center forward of his team passed the ball towards the right winger. The right winger then began to dribble the ball forward in a straight line along the right side of the pitch. What? Nobody's coming after me, the right winger thought after failing to see the sight of the opposing players. As if the opponent was letting him pass intentionally, they didn't charge at him for a while. But just as the winger was about to reach the final third of the pitch, out of nowhere he found himself surrounded. Hiro, who was trailing him, was right behind him, unmarked. However, instead of passing the ball towards him, the winger lofted the ball towards the center forward, who was being marked by 2 players from the opposing team. Despite conceding 3 goals, his teammates still refused to pass him the ball. Hiro clicked his tongue. The ball, which was launched towards the forward, got headed away by Takakazu, who was a monster in aerial duel. His reach was almost twice that of their team's center forward, who was only about 2 or 3 inches shorter than Takakazu. Predicting the direction of cleared ball, he ran towards the direction where the ball was going to land. But since the ball was going to land at the opposite side of the pitch, he wasn't able to reach the ball first, despite sprinting towards the ball in full speed. As usual, his speed is damn amazing. Manager Nozomi chuckled while witnessing his amazing run from right side of the pitch to the left side of the pitch. Hiro, being close to the area where the ball was going to land, was the first one to reach the ball. Even so, Hiro, who had ran from right side of the pitch towards the left side of the pitch, was the second to arrive at the spot where the ball landed. Now I'll show you the difference between you and me, Hiro mumbled while coming face to face with Hiro. Hiro, who was completely focused on the ball, paid no attention towards his taunts and kept his gaze fixated at the ball. While slowly dribbling the ball towards Hiro, he was gesturing Hiro to come forward. Hiro didn't run from the challenge, and just as he wished, he charged towards him. Just then, as Hiro approached him, Hiro trapped the ball between his legs and lifted it above Hiro's head while performing a rainbow flick. Humiliate him more, Hiro, Kota Yui mumbled in ecstasy while sitting at the bench in the sidelines. Mediocre, Hiro sniggered while lifting the ball. However, the smile on both of their faces lasted only for a second. Stretching his right leg backwards as if he was going to perform a scorpion kick, Hiro hit the ball with the back of his heel in mid-air without looking back and loafed the ball in front of him. As the ball was about to fall in front of him, he trapped the ball with his left foot. He then changed his direction towards the post. The opposing defenders, who were a bit far from him, sensing an attacking threat from him, dashed forward to stop him. However, before they could even reach him, he released the ball from his feet by performing a powerful shot. The ball flew towards the top right corner of the post. The opposing keeper stretched his arms to stop the ball. However, the ball flew a little over an inch from his fingers and found its way inside the net. Chapter 70, First Few Friends. After opening the score sheet for his team, Hiro ran towards the sidelines to celebrate his goal in front of Kota Yui, the guy who had gaslighted other players against him. Just as he reached the sidelines, he lifted his right hand towards his ear and curled his fingers around his ear. He then pointed his ear towards him as if he was gesturing him to repeat the words from before. After that brilliant goal from Hiro, Kota Yui, who was already fuming on the pitch, got even more agitated by his gesture. And if not for manager Nozomi standing beside him, he would have literally burst onto the scene once again. However, even after scoring the only goal for his team in the first half, not many of his teammates seemed happy about his goal. The only people that were smiling on the pitch were manager Nozomi, Hiro, and surprisingly, the opposing goalkeeper Shun Yabuzo. 15-year-old Shun, who was already set on the path to promotion to U18 team next year, was smiling despite conceding the goal against Hiro. I can see that you're meant to be a star. This wannabe pros can ostracize you as much as they want, but you'll still shine no matter what. With you, maybe we can even lift the trophy of Premier League in few years. Shun Yabuzo mumbled with a smile on his face while walking towards the ball. The Premier League which Shun was mentioning about was Prince Takamoto Trophy JFA U18 Football Premier League. The tournament for the U15 and U18 team were held separately. The Prince Takamoto Cup, since 2018, was divided into 2 age-restricted tournaments, being them the Prince Takamoto Trophy JFA U18 Football League and Prince Takamoto Trophy JFA U15 Japan Football Championship. While the U15 tournament was held in a single tournament format with no promotion and relegation, the U18 League, on the other hand, was divided into 3 leagues, with Premier League being the highest league, followed by Prince League in the second and Prefectural League in the third. In the U18 Premier League, 24 teams were split into 2 groups with 12 teams in each, which are called Premier League East and Premier League West, with each team's geographical positions being the determining factor to determine whether the club should be placed in the East Group or on the West Group. After competing among themselves in a league format, the winner of those two groups would face each other in one-legged final in a neutral venue to determine the ultimate winner of the Premier League. Similarly, the bottom two team, that is the 11th and 12th team from each group, would automatically get relegated to Prince League. In U15 categories, several middle school teams and club teams would compete with each other in qualification round to qualify for the final tournament, in which only 32 teams were allowed to participate. And those 32 teams would again compete among themselves in a knockout format to determine the ultimate champion of the tournament. With Hiro scoring the only goal for his team, the first half of the match ended with a score of 3-1. Since the duration of the match was of only 1 hour, they were given a 5-minute break before the start of the second half. And as the reserve teams returned to the sidelines to hydrate themselves, manager Nozomi walked towards the team. "I know what you guys are trying to do. Since he's a new player, you guys are probably trying to ostracize him. You guys are deliberately avoiding to give him the pass, right?" Nozomi questioned while coldly staring at the faces of the players who were avoiding Hiro in the first half. Almost everybody avoided locking eyes with Nozomi and kept their head down. "But remember, we're a team, and our fortress will only be complete when all our bricks are brought together. So in next half of the match, if I find any of you intentionally avoiding any of your teammates, I'll directly send you home. I don't need players who can't play as a team." Nozomi burst out and warned everybody to play as a team. And after making his intentions clear, he left their side and walked towards the starting team. Even after hearing his warnings, some players still continued to avoid him. However, some players came up to him and began to introduce themselves as well. "I'm Shunta Tanaka. Sorry for showing you cold shoulders back then." A guy about his height with a lanky body and chicken legs introduced himself. Fair-skinned, black eyes and short black hair, he was the right back of his team. "I'm Yuya Asano, the reserve left winger of U15 team. I'm also sorry for showing you cold shoulders previously." Another guy who was about 2 or 3 inches shorter than him introduced himself. Tan skin, short brown wavy hair, and sharp brown eyes. He was the left winger of the reserve team. Just as the two of them introduced themselves, Hiro, who was about to pour water in his mouth, spat out the water and spoke in a cheerful voice. "Nice to meet you, you two. Even though I've already introduced myself, let me introduce myself once again. I'm Takahashi Hiro. I'm 12 years old right now, and I play as an attacking midfielder on paper." "Nice to meet you too." Both of them replied in a unison, and all three of them burst out into laughter. "Did you see him score that unbelievable goal? Yeah, that goal was absolutely ridiculous. If that was in an official match, he would have easily won the best goal of the tournament." The players who were standing at a certain distance away from him started to gossip about his goal. Aside from Shunta and Yuya, others continued to avoid him. However, despite their unwillingness to approach him, he could hear them gossiping about his goal. "I'm sure they want to approach you like we do, but they're probably afraid of Kota." Shunta mumbled after hearing their gossips about Hiro's goal. "Yeah, since Kota Yui has a talented older brother who plays for the U18 team, they're afraid of getting on his bad side." Yuya mumbled while nodding his head. Listening to Shunta and Yuya's statement, he casted his glance towards Kota Yui. He was once again gaslighting other players in the team. He continued to stare at him, and after the resting period ended, Kota Yui walked towards the reserve seat and sat down grumpily while contorting his face. Seeing his grumpy face, he revealed an amusing smile on his face. Chapter 71 Show Off. Beep. The second half continued with the kickoff from the opposing team. After conceding a goal at the end of the first half, they started to play even more aggressively. Right from the kickoff, the opposing team started to press the ball forward. After receiving the pass from the center forward of his team, Hiro released a powerful through ball towards the middle of the left flank of the pitch. Since they were playing in a 4-2-1-3 formation, the left and right side of their midfield had to be covered by the two central midfielders who stood at the border of center and side. However, the two center midfielders of his team were extremely sloppy. Let alone cover the flanks, they wouldn't even leave their positions at all. As if they were a box-to-box midfielder whose field coverage was only up to the middle third of the pitch, they would rarely drop behind or run towards the sides. The pass flew right beside the right central midfielder of his team, and yet he couldn't do anything about the pass. TCH, are they some kind of mannequin? Hiro clicked his tongue upon witnessing the lackluster behavior of his teammates. Their left wing, who was quick with his feet, began to charge the ball forward without trapping the ball. Shunta, faced with the opposing left winger once again, was forced to defend against the winger. Sensing an attacking threat, Hiro, who played as an offensive midfielder, dropped towards the defensive third to support Shunta. While the defender was approaching Shunta, Hiro gestured him to block his pass course and lead him outwards. As suggested by Hiro, Shunta blocked his course and prevented him from cutting inside. After getting his route blocked by Shunta, the opposing winger was forced to dribble the ball outside the post. While the opposing winger dribbled the ball towards the corner, Shunta followed him while maintaining his pressure on him. Finally, as he was about to reach the right corner, the opposing winger gently tapped the ball between the legs of Shunta and nutmegged him. However, the one who got the ball at that time wasn't the opposing winger. Instead, it was Hiro who was tailing behind Shunta, covering the spaces left behind by Shunta. Upon getting the ball in his own defensive third, Hiro began to dribble the ball forward. The opposing forward, who was waiting for the ball inside the penalty box, began to chase after him for the ball. After intercepting the ball at his own defensive third, he dribbled the ball forward without stopping. Occasionally turning his head around in search of his teammates, he continued to dribble the ball forward. However, all of his teammates were being tightly marked by the opposing players. And even more, only 3 of the opposing attacking players were inside their half of the pitch. Aside from the 3 forwards, Hiro was standing just at the sickerly of the pitch. Faced with Hiro in front and the opposing center forward who was tailing behind him, he quickly found himself in a precarious situation as he approached the middle third of the pitch. The only players who were unmarked were the defenders and keeper. Aside from them, almost every player of his team were being tightly marked by the opposing players. "Bring it on. You luckily stopped me back then. But your luck won't help you again to get past me," Hiro mumbled under his breath while preparing himself to defend against Hiro. He then quickly turned around his head to scan the field to see if anybody was left unmarked. Finding every opposing player marked, Hiro revealed a playful grin and approached Hiro while taking huge steps. Where would it be? Left or right? Hiro thought, while keeping his gaze fixated at Hiro's feet. Hiro then took a quick look at Hiro's face. Beads of sweats forming at his temple. Calm and composed, he showed no signs of worry. Just then he noticed Hiro was about to hit the ball with the inside of his right leg. So it's left after all. He smiled inwardly as he predicted the direction of the ball. However, contrary to his expectation, Hiro made use of his both feet and lowered the ball above Hiro's head while performing a 360 rainbow flick. "What are you doing, Hiro? Why are you giving him the opportunity to show off?" Kota Yui, who was sitting in the reserve seat, clenched his fist and whispered under his breath. He couldn't let his emotion out because of the presence of manager Nozomi beside him. Thus, he cussed Hiro without uttering a single word loudly from his mouth. Hiro, on the other hand, was left dumbfounded by Hiro's actions. Just when he had thought that he had outsmarted Hiro, Hiro proved him wrong. The opposing center midfielders who were right behind Hiro came forward to clear the ball as well. However, just as they approached him, Hiro performed a beautiful body feint and got past them easily. They were no match to him. After that, it was the turn for the defenders to come up to defend against him. And as the defender left their mark to defend against him, Hiro noticed Yuya making the run inside the box. Making use of the space left behind by the opposing defenders, he loafed at the ball with acute precision towards Yuya. Shun Yabuzo, sensing trouble, left his post and dashed outside to clear the ball. Due to his timely made decision and his advantage of being a keeper, his hands reached the ball before Yuya's head. He punched the ball away from the goalpost. Beep. However, during his process of clearing the ball away, he clashed with Yuya. Getting hit by Shun's body, Yuya fell down. And as Yuya fell down, the referee blew the whistle. "What? I didn't hit him." Shun tried to justify his actions. But the referee was against his justification. He gave away a penalty to Hiro's team for Shun's foul against Yuya. While the opposing team was arguing about referee's decision, Hiro walked towards Yuya, who was lying on the ground with his face covered by his hands. Just as he got closer to him, Yuya removed his hands a little and winked his eyes at Hiro. It was very clear that Shun hadn't committed any foul, and it was only Yuya's act. Watching his Oscar-winning acting, Hiro covered his mouth and revealed a playful smile. Chapter 72 Penalty Pass. At the 33rd minute of the match, just 3 minutes after the start of the second half, his team got a penalty because of Shun Yabuzo's foul on Yuya. While the one who won them the penalty wanted Hiro to take the penalty, other players in his team refused his decision and were against of him taking the penalty. The majority of the players wanted the center forward to take the penalty. But since the penalty was won by Yuya, they were also willing to let him take the penalty as well, if he wished to take the penalty. And thus, after some discussion among the players, Yuya stepped forward to take the penalty. While Yuya was standing at a certain distance away from the ball, preparing to launch himself, all the other players, including the opponents, stood behind the penalty arc, preparing to launch themselves towards the post while waiting for Yuya to shoot the ball. Since other players beside goalkeeper and the penalty taker were forbidden to be near than 10 yards to the ball, all of the players beside Yuya and Shun stood outside of the penalty box. With his legs behind the goal line between the goal posts, Shun kept his eyes fixated on Yuya's eyes to predict the direction of the ball, while Yuya was looking for a spot to kick the ball. Beep. Just as the referee blew the whistle, Yuya ran towards the ball and shot the ball towards the bottom right corner of the post. Shun correctly predicted the direction of the ball and dived towards the bottom right corner of the post to save the ball. However, the speed of the ball was rather slow. As if he wasn't aiming for the goal, Yuya kicked the ball without much force. And in fact, he hadn't aimed for the post as well. That ball was meant as a pass for Hiro. From behind the penalty box, Hiro ran towards the ball and shot the ball at the bottom left corner of the post, opposite to where Shun had made his dive. Shun, who had already dived towards the bottom right corner, tried to stop his actions midway. However, he still couldn't react on time, and thus ended up conceding the second goal of the match. The ball effortlessly hit the net without any form of disturbances. Yeah, Yuya shouted in ecstasy upon witnessing the ball landing inside the post. Hiro, who had slotted that ball inside the goalpost, ran towards Yuya and hugged him. Nice assist, Hiro spoke while hugging him. You too. Nice goal. Ha ha ha, Yuya replied cheerfully. Coach, is that even legal? The opposing players started to protest about the goal. They began to complain to the referee. Since such events rarely happened in football, they were not aware of such penalties where a penalty taker passed the ball to his teammates, instead of shooting the ball towards the post. Yes, it's completely legal, the referee replied and shrugged their complaints. With that second goal from Hiro, the score of the match read as such, starters 3 and reserves 2. With more than 27 minutes still remaining, the game was starting to take a drastic turn. After a bit of complaining and protesting, everybody started to assume their respective positions to continue the match. The opposing players with bitter face looked extremely unhappy about that goal from Hiro. For about next 10 minutes, nothing noteworthy happened on the pitch. The opposing team continued to play with the same aggressiveness. However, the only thing that changed was the mark on Hiro. The opposing team, after conceding that second goal, started to mark Hiro. 2 of their players followed him everywhere for the next 10 minutes. At the 14th minute of the game, Hiro made a long-range shot from outside the box. The ball flew just some inches above the post and ended up as a goal kick. The keeper then played a short ball towards Shunta, and as the ball landed on his feet, Shunta began to weigh his options, looking for his teammates to pass the ball. Upon noticing Shunta hesitating to pass the ball, the opposing winger came rushing towards him to snatch the ball. Witnessing the opposing winger rushing towards him, he passed the ball to the sloppy center midfielder who had nearly costed them the goal a moment ago. I'm sure he wouldn't pass the ball to him. Thinking such, Hiro ran towards the center midfielder to snatch away the ball from him, leaving behind his mark. Pass. Hiro quickly freed himself from his mark and asked for the ball. You can shout all you want, but I know that they won't pass you the ball. Hiro revealed a smug smile as he approached the midfielder with the ball. However, contrary to his expectations, the central midfielder released the ball towards Hiro. He finally passed the ball towards Hiro. Takakazu came rushing towards him to clear the ball away. Making use of the incoming pass, he let the ball pass through him. Takakazu, who was rushing towards him to tackle him, couldn't stop his acceleration. That action from Hiro left Takakazu dumbfounded. He was hoping to tackle the ball after Hiro took hold of the ball. But since Hiro let the ball slid through him without even touching the ball, Takakazu couldn't do anything against him. Hiro then turned around and chased after the ball. Takakazu, who was rushing towards him like a bull, couldn't turn his body on time because of his acceleration. However, he didn't stop to chase after him. After he turned around, he again began to chase after Hiro, once again. With Takakazu still chasing after him, the other 3 defenders began to panic. Right winger in the right flank, Yuya in the left flank, the center forward cutting inside the box, and Hiro rushing from outside the box. The 3 defenders had to defend against 4 players. Even in that precarious situation, the one they feared the most was Hiro, who was charging from outside the box. After witnessing his shot power from his first goal and passes he displayed during the build-up of second goal, they couldn't leave him alone. Thus all 3 of them approached him while maintaining a triangular shape. With one defender rushing towards him to defend against him, other 2 stayed behind the first defender to cover up the spaces. Chapter 73 Robbed. After getting past Takakazu, Hiro found himself in front of the penalty box. However, between him and the goal, there stood 3 opposing defenders and a single goalkeeper. 3 defenders in front, and the 4th one chasing him from behind. He was forced to make his decision quickly. However, even with only 3 defenders, they had completely blocked his pass course. While the defender in front had completely blocked his pass course to his team's center forward, the other 2 defenders in the side had simultaneously blocked his pass course to his team's wingers as well. And unlike his teammates, he was willing to pass the ball to anyone with a decent chance of scoring. Now then, what will you do? Manager Nozomi mumbled while looking at him with eyes full of curiosity. Unable to find his teammates, he chose to dribble the ball forward all by himself. While they were aware of his shooting and passing, they weren't aware of his most amazing talent. He was a dribbler. Since he hadn't had the chance to touch the ball much up to that point of game, they hadn't seen him dribble much. That's why they were focusing all their attention to block his shooting course and passing course. And as he started to dribble the ball forward, the opposing defender who was in front of him gingerly approached him. With 2 other defenders behind his back, he wasn't worried about getting dribbled past. With an elastico, Hiro got past the first defender. The other 2 defenders who were just behind the first defender ran towards him as well, leaving behind their marks. However, he couldn't pass the ball to his teammates, since they had already ran past the defenders even before he could release the ball. With the ball still at his feet, he couldn't pass the ball to his teammates because of their rash actions. At that point, even if he had passed the ball to his teammates, that would have ended up as an offside. Thus, instead of passing the ball, he chose to dribble past those 2 approaching defenders as well. Seeing him approaching the penalty box, Both of them performed an aggressive sliding tackle at him at the same time. Even if it meant fouling him, they were prepared to stop him on his track. Since he was still outside of the penalty box, they were prepared for the consequences. However, contrary to their intentions of fouling him, he simply lifted the ball above their legs and stepped over them. What are those three morons doing? They can't even stop one person. Kota Yui gnashed his teeth upon witnessing Hiro's skills. No one here can match your dribbling prowess. Only you can make it look easy after tearing the entire defense of the opposition. Manager Nozomi chuckled after watching him dribble past every defenders of the team without the training bibs. After getting past all those three defenders, he found himself inside the penalty box in front of the post, one-on-one with the keeper. Before he could make his shot, Shun left his post and threw his body towards him. Even faced with Shun, he tapped the ball lightly with the outside of his right foot and got past his long arms. After dribbling past the entire defense of the opposing team, including the keeper, he tapped the ball lightly towards the open post. With the keeper lying beside him, there was simply no stopping to the ball released from his feet. Hence, after kicking the ball, he didn't even look at the ball. He was sure that the ball would end up inside the post. He simply ran towards the sidelines to celebrate his goal without even looking at the ball. Beep. And he only turned back after hearing the whistle of the referee. Looking back, he found the ball inside the post. However, the crowd was gathered at the opposite sideline. Aside from Yuya, his other teammates were gathered around the center forward of his team, jumping atop each other. Why are they gathered there when I'm the one who scored the goal? Feeling all confused, he thought to himself after noticing the crowd gathered at the opposite corner. He then ran towards Yuya, who was standing in front of the goalpost all alone with a dejected look on his face. What's happening? He questioned after reaching close to Yuya. Just as he approached him, Yuya lowered his eyes and drooped his shoulder. He then slightly lifted his head up and spoke to him in a low voice. Ryuma touched the ball before it entered the post. That's why they're celebrating his goal. From what he heard from Yuya, he found out that just before the ball entered the post, Ryuma Teuchi, the center forward of his team, had touched the ball and robbed him of his goal. Even after finding out the deeds of Ryuma, Hiro showed no change in his facial expressions. Why do you look so calm even after finding out the truth, Hiro? Unable to see any changes in his facial expressions, Yuya questioned him. However, Hiro revealed a smile instead, without saying anything. As if the fact that Ryuma robbed him of his goal didn't affect him, he maintained a smile on his face. You were robbed, Hiro. You were robbed. Yuya exasperated upon seeing his smiling face. It doesn't matter who scores the goal, Yuya. What matters is our team tied the score. Hiro replied with a smile on his face. But just then the referee made his way towards the celebrating crowd and declared the goal void. No goal. Ryuma was offside. The referee intoned. Just as referee declared the goal void, he remembered that all three of his team's attackers were offside. A striker needs to be hungry about goals. But what you did was plain robbery, Ryuma. Manager Nozomi exasperated while keeping his eyes at the ongoing scene. Your mistakes has costed your team the goal, Ryuma. Yui, go warm up. You'll be playing as the forward. Manager Nozomi exclaimed after turning his head towards Kota Yui. He wanted to replace Ryuma because of his selfish blunder. He was going to play Kota Yui as the forward despite him being an offensive midfielder. Kota Yui, who was enjoying the scene, was totally immersed in the drama happening on the field. Thus, he couldn't hear the words of Manager Nozomi. He simply kept on staring at the ongoing commotion happening in the field with a wry smile on his face. Kota Yui, didn't you hear me? Go warm up. Manager Nozomi yelled upon noticing his disgusting expression. Chapter 70, 4 Academy Players. After declaring the equalizing goal offside, the referee signaled every player to assume their positions so that he could continue the match. Before the continuation of the match, Manager Nozomi decided to make some changes in his team. Ryuma, who had robbed him of his goal and also costed his team an important goal, got substituted by Manager Nozomi. Upon getting substituted by Manager Nozomi, Ryuma left the pitch with a bitter face. He wasn't happy about that substitution. Even so, he didn't throw any tantrums. He simply walked outside the field without uttering a single word. And thus, after a player changed from the reserve team, the game continued with a free kick from the opposition. Upon getting awarded with a free kick because of the earlier offside, Shun played a short ball towards Takakazu. With Noon to defend against him, Takakazu began to move the ball forward. Kota, who was supposed to be the replacement of Ryuma, should have been the one to stop Takakazu from moving the ball forward. But instead, he had fallen back towards the position of Hiro. Thus, instead of continuing to play with the same 4-2-1-3 formation, their formation had drastically changed into 4-2-2-2 formation because of the addition of Kota Yui. Also because of the lack of a number 9 in their team, having Noon to defend against, Takakazu, who was supposed to be playing as a central defender, moved towards the midfield position and started to play as a ball-playing defensive midfielder instead. Despite moving forward towards the defensive midfield position, Takakazu continued to drop back towards his original position to fulfill his responsibility as a central defender whenever the opposition went offensive. For the rest of the game, he continued to switch between defender and midfielder. Because of the intrusion of Kota Yui, Hiro was forced to move forward to cover the vacant position of the striker, and thus he started to play as a number 9 instead for the rest of the match. Even so, because of Kota Yui's unwillingness to pass the ball towards him, he didn't get enough chances to score. And thus, they ended up losing the game with the final score of 3-2 because of Kota Yui's selfishness and rash actions. Just as the referee blew the whistle to signal the end of the game, Hiro, who was running towards Kota Yui in hopes of getting a pass, stopped his movement. Out of exhaustion, most of the players in the field threw themselves on the ground and collapsed on the field. Hiro, too, was somewhat tired from running all over the field. For the entirety of the match, he had made himself available for the pass by shaking off his mark. But because of his teammates' unwillingness to pass the ball, he didn't get much opportunity to score, despite covering the most distance in that match. After losing a match on his first day at the club, he casted a glance at the field in front with somewhat tired expression. With bodies of exhausted players lying atop the grassy green field, the pitch, which was filled with the screams and yells of the players a moment ago, was filled with the panting noises of the exhausted players instead. While moving his eyes around the field, his eyes stopped at the picturesque scene of the molten sky, filled with hues of orange, red, and purple. The sky was a canvas, and the sun was the master painter wielding a brush of light. Basking under the warm rays of the evening sun, he kept on staring at the dreamy scenery unfolding in front of his eyes. Lost in the soothing scenery, he totally forgot about the defeat he suffered a moment ago. Just then, while he was staring blankly at the sun setting in the horizon, Yuya walked towards him. However, he couldn't even feel his presence until he heard his voice. If not for Ryuma and Kota, we would have won the match. Yuya's voice cracked a little as he vented his frustration. Hearing his voice, he turned his head towards him. Noticing his red eyes and puffy face, he could tell that he was very sad about the loss they incurred a moment ago. Maybe he's scared. Since this match was the deciding factor to select the players for the next match, he's probably fearing that he won't get picked because of this match. But he has performed well. So if coach has noticed his performance, he wouldn't leave him on the bench for the next match. He thought while staring at the worried face of Yuya. Don't take it to your heart, Yuya. You've played really well today. You've played better than most of the players in the field today. So I'm sure you're going to get picked for Sunday's friendly match. Hiro mumbled in a soft tone while trying to console him. It's not about me, Hiro. We only lost today because of this so-called academy players. Just because they've been playing for the club since childhood, they act as if they're the only talented players in the club. Yuya intoned, sounding somewhat irritated. Academy players? Hiro questioned with somewhat puzzled expression. Yeah, they are the players who are training with the club since their childhood. And most of the players in this team are academy players. They've been playing for the club since they were 5 or 6. And they are always fearful of the outside. So you're not one of the academy players? Hiro interrupted Yuya before he could finish his sentence. Yeah, I passed the trial the previous year. And it has only been a little more than a year since I joined the club. At first they treated me the same as you as well. But since I couldn't make it to the starting team, they realized that I couldn't jeopardize their spot at the team. And only after that confirmation, they approached me. Yuya intoned. I see. So are there any other players here who are not academy players? While trying to process the information shared by Yuya, Hiro paused for a while. He then again questioned him after a moment of pause. Shunta and I were the only ones who passed the previous trial. And I heard that in the trial before us, only Shun managed to pass the trial. So I guess including you, we are the only players who joined the club from outside selection. Yuya exclaimed. I see. No wonder I never saw any of these players on the nationals. Hiro intoned while striking his chin. Chapter 75 Forgiveness. As mentioned by Yuya, most of the players in the youth team were academy players who had been playing for the club since they were 5 or 6 years old. Meaning most of the players in the club were local players from around the same region as the club. And the reason why none of the players in the club knew of him was because they were academy players as well. Since the players of the youth club could only compete against players from other schools from middle school onward, none of the players in the youth club had participated in the nationals. During elementary school level, the academy players could only compete against other youth academies and occasionally some elementary and middle schools from their region. What? You have participated in the nationals? Yuya intoned with his eyes wide open and mouth agape. Yeah, I've participated in 5 of it. Hiro replied casually. Hearing such, Yuya leaned his body a bit closer towards him and incredulously stared at him with his eyes wide open. He continued to stare at him for a while. After a bit of thinking, as he remembered something, he finally opened his mouth to speak. 5 times, huh? From Tokushima, all I can remember is the recent winners, Ukami Elementary School. Did you play for Ukami Elementary School? Yeah, that's where I played. He replied casually without any change in his facial expressions. You played for Ukami Elementary School, and your name is similar to that of the star player of Ukami Elementary School. But you look nothing like him. Was there 2 Takahashi Hiro in your school? Yuya questioned him while striking his chin, trying to remember the face of Hiro from 3 years ago. No, there wasn't. I'm that star player that you were mentioning about. Hiro replied while pointing his finger towards him. My freaking lord. You look nothing like him. How can a person change so much in less than 3 years? Yuya freaked out when he found out that he was the star player of the Ukami Elementary School who had helped them lift the trophy in 2019. That must be because of the muscle-enhancing elixir. After consuming it, my body changed a bit too much. I gained few kilos, and my height also increased by few inches. And since the elixir affected my overall muscle, it also affected my facial muscles too after all. Hiro thought after listening to Yuya's claims. Since Yuya only watched the finals of the Nationals, he wasn't aware that Ukami Elementary School, which won the 2019 Nationals, had participated in 5 of the Nationals. The last time when I saw you on TV, you still looked like a kid with baby face. Did puberty hit you even before you entered your teenage? Yuya questioned while staring at him. Ha, that's funny. But you don't have to act too dramatic now. Hiro mumbled after giving away a sarcastic laugh. Not to make the situation too much awkward, Yuya cracked a joke while revealing a sarcastic laugh. Ha. Yeah, I feel honored to play with such a huge star. Maybe in distant future, I can brag about this huge achievement with others as well. Haha. Everybody gather around. While they were cheerfully chatting with each other sharing their past experiences, they heard voice of manager Nozomi commanding everybody to gather around. Let's continue our talk later. Saying such, both of them dismissed their conversation and began to walk towards manager Nozomi, who was standing at the sidelines just in front of the reserve seat. And as everybody gathered around him, he began to stare at the players. I don't have much to complain about the starting team, but I've a lot to complain about the performance of the reserves. He intoned while staring at the faces of the reserve players. With their head bowed down, nobody from the reserve team dared to look manager Nozomi in the eyes. Since all of them were also aware of their mistakes except Kodo Yui, they simply couldn't bring themselves to lift their chin up. Ryuma stepped forward. He yelled after staring at them for a while. Yes, sir. Ryuma answered and stepped forward without lifting his head up. Tell me honestly, where were you wrong? Nozomi questioned. Ryuma hesitated to open his mouth, and he just kept on standing without saying anything. I asked you, where were you wrong? Reply me, Ryuma Takeuchi. Nozomi yelled. I shouldn't have touched that ball. He replied meekly with his gaze pointed at the ground. What ball? Nozomi inquired. The ball which costed our team the most precious goal. I shouldn't have been selfish. Ryuma replied. Was that your only mistake? Nozomi kept on questioning him. No, sir. I was sloppy with the attack. I couldn't position myself better. And most importantly, I kept avoiding Hiro, even when he was free, sir. Ryuma replied without holding back anything. Then will you repeat this same mistake again? Nozomi asked while stepping towards him. No, sir. From now on, I'm going to behave like professional player. Ryuma replied. Good. But since you've already made the mistake, you ought to get punished as well. Apologize to Hiro and run around the field 20 laps while saying sorry to Hiro. Do you agree with my punishment? Yes, sir. I deserve to be punished. I won't repeat such actions again. Saying such, he walked towards Hiro. Please forgive me, my friend. I was unreasonably selfish. Ryuma bowed his head down low and apologized to Hiro. It's okay. Hiro replied without holding back any grudges. After hearing his reply, Ryuma stormed away to complete his punishment. Since they were already exhausted because of the match, even a simple punishment like that was a painful torture for them. And all of you as well. Apologize to him and complete your punishment. If I find you doing such deeds again, then I swear that I'll send all of you to your home. And I'll also blacklist you so that no clubs in Japan would ever accept you. Do you hear me? Manager Nozomi yelled while warning the reserve team players. This warning is meant for everybody, so don't think that it doesn't apply to you. He continued while staring at the starting players. After listening to Manager Nozomi's warnings, all of his teammates except Shunta and Yuya apologized to him with their head bowed down and stormed away to complete the punishment. Since he believed that holding grudges among teammates would only disrupt the harmony of the team and affect the performance of the team, he forgave everybody who apologized to him. Kodo Yui was the last one to approach him. Because of the coach's warning, he reluctantly apologized to him. However, even when apologizing to him, Hiro couldn't feel any sort of sincerity in his apologies. Even so, he forgave him as well without complaining anything. Kodo Yui, come to my office after you finish your punishment. Just as Kodo Yui was about to run after making his apology, Manager Nozomi stopped him and commanded him to go to his office later. Chapter 76 Rondo. By the time the evening training came to an end, the sun was already on the verge of setting down. And as such, after punishing the reserve players for their selfish deeds, Manager Nozomi concluded the end of the evening training. While the players who were running on the field stayed overtime to complete their punishment, other players started to head towards the shower to clean themselves. Accompanied by Yuya, Shunta, and Shun, he made his way outside the pitch. While making his way outside the pitch, he removed his training bib and upper jersey, which was completely soaked from his sweat. And just as he undressed his upper body, he flipped his jersey atop his shoulder and mumbled after letting out a deep sigh. Huff. Finally, I can rest now. From Tokushima to Kawasaki. And without any rest, a match on my first day. Man, I'm exhausted. But I do feel sorry for those guys. Even after running for about an hour, they still have to run more. He continued. Those guys deserved it. Yuya replied, sounding somewhat angry, while turning his head towards the players who were running on the field. Yeah, those guys deserved it. Shunta and Shun nodded their head and voiced their opinions. Hiro couldn't refute their statements. Huh, yeah, you're right. Hiro stretched his right hand towards the back of his head and revealed an awkward smile while scratching his scalp. Faster, faster. While their training had come to an end, the training of U18 team was still going on. Under manager Makoto's guidance, the U18 players were playing Rondo. 3 groups consisting of 8 players each were playing Rondo in the U18 pitch. Rondo is a type of game, similar to keep away, that is used mostly as a form of training drill by the football clubs. In this game, a group of players is tasked with the responsibility of keeping possession of the ball while completing a series of passes, while the other group of players, sometimes only a single player, tries to take the possession. Oh, they're playing Rondo. Hiro mumbled in awe while turning his gaze towards the U18 pitch. With a temporary white spray, several patterns were drawn across the pitch, and each of those 3 groups were playing inside those patterns drawn on the pitch. One group was playing inside a circle, another was playing inside a square, and the final one was playing in a triangle. While 6 players were standing at the boundary line of the patterns, 2 players were positioned at the middle of those 6 players. While those group of 6 players were tasked with keeping possession of the ball, the pair of 2 players on the field was trying to take the possession of the ball from those group of 6 players. With swift and timely passes, the 6 players were trying their best to avoid those 2 players. And those 2 players were also trying their best to win the ball back. Yeah, it's an everyday scene. Since their training ends about half an hour later than us, their coach always makes them play Rondo at the end of their training session. Shun replied. The keeper needs to join the game as well. Hiro asked while pointing at the 2 groups with keeper. Yup, everybody needs to join it. No exception. Shun replied. Now let's go. Judging from your skills, you'll probably get to suffer the training of U18 by next year. So don't worry, your time will come. Ha ha ha. Saying such, Shun and the others began to walk towards the building. He then casted a final glance at the U18 pitch and stormed towards the building to join his friends. Since he was still new to the club, he needed to stick with his teammates to get familiarized with his surrounding. Before heading into the shower, they stopped by the changing room. Place your jersey here. The club will do the laundry. Yea mumbled while pointing at a huge basket placed at the changing room. But do remember that the club will only take care of your jerseys. Your personal clothes, you need to wash it yourself. So don't you ever put your shocks or other clothes in the basket like someone once did. Yuya continued while staring at Shunta. What? That was only one time, and I wasn't familiar with the rule. Shunta mumbled, sounding somewhat irritated. Hara. Yeah. Along with his jersey, he even put his underwear in the basket. Shun burst out in laughter while revealing Shunta's embarrassing past. Since the changing room in the hostel building was connected to the shower room, Shunta had once undressed himself completely and put all his clothes into the basket, including his underwear, before heading to the shower butt naked. So do remember, you can only put your jersey here. Only jersey. Saying such, the 3 of them undressed themselves and put their jersey inside the basket. Since Hiro had already taken off his upper jersey, he only needed to undress his lower half at that time. Thus, after taking off his half pants, he threw his jersey inside the large basket in front of him. A moment ago, they hadn't paid any attention towards his body because of the ongoing events. But now that they paid attention to his body, they couldn't help but notice his muscles. Whoa, look at those muscles. Who knew he'd be hiding such defined muscles underneath his clothes? Shun mumbled in awe upon witnessing his muscular body. Yeah, look at those abs. He's got 6-pack abs. Saying such, Shunta turned his gaze towards his stomach. Man, I'm jealous of his body. Shunta whined, sounding somewhat jealous. May I touch those muscles? Shun asked while moving his hands closer towards him. No man, that's gross. Saying such, Hiro took a step back. Huh, don't be shy, man. I'm not into boys. Shun burst out in laughter. And so did the other 2. However, Hiro was still getting creepy vibes from Shun, and thus he stormed towards the shower room. The 3 of them followed behind him while teasing him. So what if he's got a muscular body? Skill is what matters. Hirato, who was standing at the door waiting for them to get undressed so that he could put his jersey inside the basket, mumbled, sounding somewhat annoyed by Hiro and his gang's conversation while staring at them. And he's skillful too. Takakazu, who was standing beside him, spoke. Takakazu's statement was like salt to his wounds. And thus, after hearing his statement, he got even more irritated. Chapter 77 Revelation. Just as he entered the shower room, he noticed the floor and the walls covered with white marbles. A lot of shower heads were embedded at the walls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14 damn. 14 shower heads. Hiro intoned after counting the number of shower heads in the shower room. The hostel shower room had a capacity to host 14 people at once. With a 4 feet tall wall separating the chambers, there were altogether 14 chambers. With no doors, the chambers were quite open. The ceiling of the shower room was pretty high as well. At the top of the walls, there was rectangular glass window used for ventilation. With bright LED lights attached to the ceiling, the whole shower room was illuminated bright by those white lights. I expected that reaction. Yea mumbled casually after hearing the words of Hiro. Now let's not stand here and stare at the shower in daze. Let's go and wash ourselves quickly. After all, other players will be coming in a while. Saying such, Yuya lightly pushed him forward. Whoa, whoa. Upon getting pushed by Yuya, he wobbled a little and crashed against another player. Luckily, neither of them fell down. The player with whom he crashed was the opposing left winger. Sorry. While trying to stabilize himself, he apologized for crashing on him. However, the guy with whom he crashed against didn't speak anything at all. Unable to hear his response, Hiro shrugged his attention away from him. He then turned back and poured on Yuya. It could have been dangerous, Yuya. Luckily, Noon got injured. But please don't do such things again. Sorry, I won't do it again. Yuya apologized while joining his hands into a namaste. It's okay, but don't do such things from next time. Saying such, he turned around. And just as he turned around, he found the opposing winger staring at him. Wavy black hair which almost covered his eyes, sharp nose, and somewhat tanned skin. With his bulging eyes, he was staring at him waiting for an opportunity to erupt. You're fond of dancing, huh? Dancing on the field wasn't enough, so you started to dance on the shower room too. The left winger exasperated. Why are you making this issue big, Seiya? He has already apologized to you for crashing against you. And plus it wasn't even his fault. It was me who pushed him. Yuya stepped forward to defend Hiro. I'm not talking to you, dork. Seiya shrugged his words and turned his attention towards Hiro once again. Who does he think he is? Why must he get special treatment from the coach? Today, just because of him, our friends got punished. Today it's them, tomorrow it'll be us. Seiya erupted. Just as he finished, other players around them started to gossip. Yeah, why does he get special treatment? Yeah, Seiya's correct. Today it's them, tomorrow it'll be us as well. Hiro didn't react to his claims and kept on staring at him with his mouth shut. He thought that speaking more would only worsen the situation, and he was there to play football and improve himself. He knew that Seiya was upset about the punishment. Thus, he kept his mouth shut. All bark but no bite. So let's wait for him to cool down. He thought while looking at him bark. However, Yuya, Shunta, and Shun who were beside him didn't share his intentions. They stood up for him. Especially Yuya, who was fuming with anger after listening to the unreasonable claims of Seiya, was on the verge of eruption. He's a nationals champion, a talent sought after by the world. And speaking of the punishment, those players running in the field only got punished because of their unwillingness to cooperate. Or did you not hear what Manager Nozomi said a moment ago? Yuya exploded. Hearing such words coming out from the mouth of Yuya, everybody in the shower room got silent all of a sudden. Then after a moment of pause, they began to gossip. He has won the nationals. No wonder he plays so well. There must be something special in him. While majority of the player in the room was praising him, there were also some players who were still criticizing him. That must be a lie. After listening to the words of Yuya, Seiya started to get flustered. He wasn't willing to accept his claims. Huh? What national champion? Stop lying. If he did win the national championship, then why don't he tell us the name of his school? Unwilling to accept the fact that Hiro had won national championship, Seiya asked him about his school name with a smug smile on his face. As if he was sure that the words of Yuya were mere lies, he questioned him without a bit of hesitation. Ukami Elementary School, the 2019 champions. He's their star player Takahashi Hiro. If you don't believe me, you can go Google it in Manager Nozomi's phone as well. Yuya replied. Since they weren't allowed to bring mobile phone in the hostel, Yuya told them to search for the fact from Manager Nozomi's phone. Now I remember. You're that soccer wizard, right? Takakazu interrupted after listening to statement of Yuya. Hiro, who was staring blankly at Yuya, turned his gaze towards Takakazu and replied. Yeah, I did operate that channel for a while, though I didn't post more than 5 videos. And I also deleted the account before the start of pandemic. I knew it. No wonder you felt so familiar. Hirado, he's the same guy from the video I showed you back then. Takakazu shouted in ecstasy. Hirado, who was standing just beside the door with his towels, went completely blank after hearing the words of Takakazu. Since the beginning, he didn't have any favorable impression of Hiro. But now that he found out that he was a very famous footballing talent, he was at a loss of words. Damn, I never realized that you were a national champion, Hiro. Shun mumbled while looking at Hiro. Yeah, and he has participated in 5 of it as well. Yuya continued with his flattery. Holy cow, 5 times. With their mouth agape, all of the player in the shower room intoned. My school from Hokkaido never even got to participate in the nationals. Shun mumbled under his breath. Chapter 78 Morning Training. Ring, ring. At around 5 in the morning, an irritating sound of the alarm clock similar to that of emergency horn reverberating from Shun's side of bed woke him up. However, the person who had set the alarm clock showed no reaction and kept on sleeping like a pig. Ugh, Shun, turn off your alarm clock. Hiro murmured while covering his ears and went back to sleep. Even though he would normally wake up at around that time in the morning, he was struggling to wake up at the sound of the alarm clock that morning. Because of his late-night conversation with Shun, both of them had slept pretty late in the previous night. And thus, instead of waking up, he tried to sleep some more while covering his ears. But the irritating sound from the alarm clock continued without a break. Arg! Shun, shut that damn alarm off. He exasperated. However, Shun still didn't reply anything at all. Neither did he turn off the alarm, nor did he reply anything. He simply kept on sleeping while snoring. Unable to hear Shun's response, he rose up from his bed and wobbled towards Shun's drawer attached to his bed to turn off the alarm clock. With both their beds placed side by side, there was a decent space between their beds. Ugh, just why does he set alarm, if he's not going to wake up? He mumbled, sounding somewhat annoyed while walking back towards his bed after turning off the alarm clock. Just as he was walking towards his bed, a gust of cold breeze came rustling towards him out of nowhere. That gust of cold breeze gave him chills. Feeling cold, he crossed his arm and squeezed his body. Now where did this gust of breeze come from? Mumbling such, he turned his gaze towards the window. The maroon-colored plain curtains were dangling and dancing along with the wind. Because of their late-night conversation, they had completely forgotten to shut the window. So the window was open, huh? Saying such, he walked towards the window to close the window. But just as he was about to shut the window, his eyes wandered towards the pitch outside. Players were already rushing towards the pitch for their morning training. Seeing them rushing towards the pitch, he remembered something. Right. Previous night, he mentioned about the morning training which starts at 5:30 in the morning. So what time is it right now? After remembering about the morning training, he leaned back to check the time in Shun's alarm clock. The clock read as such 5:10. Shun, wake up. It's already 5:10. He panicked after noticing the time on the clock. He then quickly folded his blankets and took out his toothbrush from his bag. He still hadn't unpacked his luggage. However, he had placed his daily use item on a carry bag instead of a suitcase. While he was hurrying to leave for the training, Shun was still lying in the bed with his eyes shut. Saliva dripping from his open mouth atop his pillow, he was drooling while sleeping in a weird position. Unable to wake him via his voice, he shook him to wake him. And as he began to shake him, he woke up while shouting in a state of panic. Earthquake! Earthquake! Yeah, it's the beginning of an apocalypse. So wake up now. Saying such, he walked towards his bed to grab his boot and training kit. After conversing with Shun in the previous night, Hiro had found out that Shun was fond of manga and webtoons. That's why he made such remarks when Shun woke up in a state of panic. I'll leave first. You should hurry up as well. Saying such, he unlocked the door and left the room. With few bright stars and crescent moons still shining brightly atop the dark sky, the sun hadn't risen yet. Good morning, coach. Hiro greeted manager Nozomi, who was standing in front of the door of the pitch dressed in an ash-gray tracksuit. Good morning, Hiro, he greeted him back. After greeting him, he started to scribble something on a note which he was carrying in his hand. As if he was noting his time of attendance, he continued to note down something for about few seconds. And as he finished noting down, he lifted his head and looked towards him. You're the 15th. Nozomi mumbled while looking at him. Huh? He asked dumbfoundedly. He didn't understand the meaning behind his statement. You're the 15th one to arrive on the pitch. Nozomi clarified. Damn, players here are damn punctual. Hiro intoned after finding out the meaning behind Nozomi's earlier statement. One must be willing to arrive early and leave late, if they're aiming to become a pro after all. Nozomi chuckled as he heard him. Go to Coach Kazushi Fuji. He'll instruct you about the training drill. Yes, sir. Saying such, he entered the pitch. At the sidelines of the pitch, a man probably in his 30s was standing with a checklist in his hand, dressed in a casual tracksuit. Coach Fuji was one of the assistant coaches of manager Makoto, who was responsible with the task of overseeing the training drills of the players. He was also an analyst who advised both the managers about the performance of the players in the training. He was also tasked with the responsibility of analyzing the performance of the players in official matches. Good morning, Coach Fuji. I'm Takahashi Hiro, a new recruit for the team. Since Coach Fuji was at the U18 pitch the day before when he introduced himself, he greeted him while introducing himself. I know you. I was one of the coaches who approved your signing after all. Coach Fuji replied casually. Oh, I didn't know about that. Hiro mumbled with a stoic face after listening to the words of Coach Fuji. Go stretch your body for a while. We'll start the training with the team at exactly 5:30. He advised him to stretch his body. Since there was still 7 minutes left for the training to begin, Coach Fuji wanted him to stretch his body. Yes, sir, he replied and turned around. All the other players who had arrived early were doing their own thing as well. Some were running while some were shooting. Everybody in the pitch was doing their own thing. Chapter 79 Modern Fullback. He then walked away from Coach Fuji. By twisting and turning his body, he started to stretch his body. While he was stretching his body, Yuya and Shunta approached him. They had arrived at the pitch about 10 minutes earlier than him. Yo, good morning. Yuya greeted him with a wide grin on his face. Even in that cold morning, he seemed pretty energetic. Those guys are still hesitant of approaching you. He continued while turning his gaze at other players who were stealing a peek of him since the moment he entered the pitch. Leave them be. I'm sure everything will work out fine with time. Hiro replied while pausing his actions. Even after revealing his identity the day before, his teammates were still somewhat hesitant of approaching him. Far in one of the goalposts, Hirado and Takakazu were practicing their shooting accompanied by the goalkeeper from the reserve team. His technique is pretty good, Hiro mumbled while watching him shoot. Who, Hirato? Shunta questioned while turning his gaze towards the two of them. Yeah. Although he lacks power, his technique is good. Hiro continued. As much as I'd hate to compliment him, but I can't deny the fact that he's one of the talented player in U15 team. And he's not only great in terms of skill, but he's also great in terms of something else as well. Hara. Yuya finished his sentence with a playful smile. Yeah, his weight is great as well. Hara. Shunta burst out into laughter. While they were gossiping about Hirato, they failed to notice the presence of Seiya behind them. Without being noticed, Seiya, who had been eavesdropping their conversation, ran towards Hirato to tell him about the content of their conversation. Let's not talk about him. Actually, I want to talk to you about something, Shunta. I noticed that you've got a pretty quick feet. But why don't you go up the field? You should be using your pace to attack from the flanks. Hiro suggested. You shouldn't stick to a traditional role. You're more suited to be playing as a modern fullback instead of a traditional fullback. Do you watch Bundesliga? While giving suggestions to Shunta, he asked him if he watched Bundesliga. Not much, but I love watching Premier League. Shunta replied. That works as well. You know Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? The fullback from Liverpool. Hiro asked. Shunta slightly nodded his head without uttering anything. Have you ever paid attention to his gameplay? Even though he's a fullback, he's more known for his attacking threat than for his defensive talent. And I'm not saying his defense is terrible, but what makes him known is his crosses and runs across the flank. With your pace, you two should participate more on the offense as well. Hiro gave him the example of Trent Alexander-Arnold from Liverpool and suggested him to participate on the offense. That's a good suggestion, Hiro. But he can't cross well. And unlike Trent, he's not good with the ball as well. Yuya pointed out the flaws in Shunta. Yeah, I'm a bit ashamed to say this, but he's right. Shunta meekly replied. Then we'll help you to correct your flaws. Hiro exclaimed with a smile on his face while turning his gaze towards Yuya, staring at him with his expectant eyes. We will. Yuya replied while pointing his finger towards him, looking somewhat confused. After a moment of pause, he laughed awkwardly. Ha, yes we will. Don't worry, Shunta. We'll help you. Thank you guys. His eyes twinkling, Shunta thanked both of them for offering their help to help him improve. Just then, as Shun made his appearance towards the pitch looking somewhat sleep-deprived, Manager Nozomi closed the door of the pitch. Beep. Manager Nozomi blew his whistle to grab the attention of the players on the field. Okay, now everybody gather around. Nozomi yelled and commanded everybody to gather around. Upon hearing the command of Manager Nozomi, all the players started to gather around him. Look, the coach is calling. We should probably go as well. Yuya intoned. Hiro and Shunta nodded their head. The three of them then started to walk towards the crowd as well. And also you should watch the gameplay of Alphonso Davies, the fullback from Bayern Munich. Just like you, he's got a rather quick feet. You two should use your pace for attacking like him, Hiro suggested during their walk. And just as they joined the crowd, the two coaches on the field began to speak. For today's training session, we will be measuring your overall improvement. And for that, we'll be analyzing your physicality, passing, shooting, defending, etc. We'll also be ranking you guys according to your performance. Also, there will be punishment for the bottom 3 players. So be prepared to sweat a lot. Coach Fuji revealed with a somewhat sinister smile on his face. The coaches wanted to check their improvements. While the coach was talking about the training drills, his eyes met with Hirato's, who was standing opposite to him. Staring at him with his bulging eyes, he could feel anger rushing in his eyes. Why is he looking at me like that? He wondered after noticing Hirato's gaze towards him. Pay attention, everybody. Manager Nozomi yelled upon noticing Hiro wandering his gaze around the field as if his focus was somewhere else. Nozomi's voice brought him back to his senses. Noticing him coming back to his senses, Nozomi then cleared his throat and requested Coach Fuji to continue the explanation. For our first drill, we'll be measuring your pace. And to do that, we'll first arrange you guys in a group of 3 to save time. After that, according to the number of your group, you'll sprint from the outline towards the half line without pausing. Do you get it? Coach Fuji informed them about their first drill. Yes, sir. Everybody yelled in unison. Okay, then I'll allocate your groups. Step forward when I call your name. Coach Fuji then began to allocate the players in groups. Shunta got placed in the second group, and Shun got placed in the 5th group. Unluckily, Yuya and Hiro got placed alongside Hirato in group first, and thus they were forced to run before anyone else. Okay, group 1, step forward. Coach Fuji asked group 1 to step forward to start the first drill. Also, Shun, come forward as well. We need one more person to measure their time. And just as he called out for the players of group 1 and Shun to step forward, the 3 players of group 1 and Shun stepped forward. Let's see who's out of shape now, Hirato mumbled while standing beside him. I guess someone informed him about our earlier conversation. He thought after listening to his taunts. Chapter 80, Gentle Reminder. As commanded by Coach Fuji, the 3 of them stepped forward and walked towards the goal line. After reaching the goal line, they stood behind the goal line while preparing to launch themselves. Yuya, with somewhat flustered face, looked a bit anxious. Hirato, on the other hand, was filled with rage and hatred. His eyes fixated at Hiro, he was glaring at him as if he was going to swallow him alive. Despite noticing Hirato's contemptuous stare, he paid no attention to him and kept his eyes focused at the finish line, which was about 50 yards away from the position he was standing at that moment. Shunta seemed quite agile, but I wonder who would win among us if we were to race against each other. Hiro thought while preparing to run. Let's test it out. I'll run as fast I can, and I'll also tell him to do the same. Later we can compare our timing. While Hirado was fixated on defeating Hiro, Hiro on the other hand didn't even consider him his rival. He was more focused on competing with Shunta. And as they assumed their position and prepared themselves to launch, Coach Fuji, who was standing behind the half line accompanied by manager Nozomi and Shun, signaled the other two to prepare themselves to record the time of those three players standing behind the goal line. Beep. Just as Coach Fuji blew his whistle, Yuya, Hirado, and Hiro, all three of them launched themselves towards the half line. Hiro's acceleration was unmatched. From the moment of their launch, Yuya and Hirado, who started alongside him, were forced to tail his back just within some seconds. They didn't even come close to challenging him. Just by looking at them run, one could tell that Yuya and Hirado were no match for Hiro. Hiro finished the sprint in 9.9 seconds. On the other hand, Yuya finished the sprint in 14.9 seconds. Despite being a little overweight, Hirado, who was the slowest among them, took 16.4 seconds to finish the sprint. And just as Hirado crossed the half line, he threw himself on the pitch and collapsed on the pitch. While panting heavily, he covered his eyes with his hands. Impressive. In less than 3 years he improved so much. I still remember back then during his trial for the club it took him 24 seconds to complete 50-yard dash. But look at him now, he completed the same test in 9.9 seconds. If he continues to improve like this, maybe soon he can even achieve the top speed of professional footballers. Manager Nozomi's eyes gleamed with expectations as he mumbled in awe upon witnessing the progress of Hiro. As much as Manager Nozomi was shocked to find out his improvement, yet he wasn't the only one who was shocked by Hiro's improvement at that field. Coach Fuji, who was standing just beside him, had the same expression as that of Nozomi's. Is it even humanly possible to improve like this? Just how is he able to improve more than twice in less than 3 years? And he's only 12 years old? What kind of monster are we training in our youth facility? Coach Fuji thought while looking at the time recorded in his notebook. Did you see him run? He runs like a wild horse. Yuya and Hirado, they both weren't even close to challenging him. One of the players mentioned. Yeah. Did he inherit Usain Bolt's gene, or what? Another player exaggerated. And as such the players began to gossip after seeing him run. Impressive start from the players of first group. Now let's continue with other groups. Coach Fuji intoned. And with that, players from next group stepped forward and assumed their marks. One after the other, the players competed among themselves. And just as the final player from the final group completed his sprint, Coach Fuji announced the end of first drill. After announcing the end of the first drill, Coach Fuji and manager Nozomi began to tally the data. And while they were tallying the data, Hiro's wandering eyes landed on Hirado, who was still at the ground, panting. While gasping for breath, Hirado lifted his chin to take a peek at Hiro. But upon noticing Hiro's gaze, he quickly diverted his gaze away from him. And as the coaches finished tallying the data, Coach Fuji began to announce the result of the first drill. Okay now, everyone gather around. I'll announce the result of the first phase. It was a neck-to-neck battle between the first and second. And the one who has clinched the spot for the number 1 is Shunta Tanaka with a recorded time of 9.4 seconds. Takahashi Hiro, who came in second, recorded a time of 9.9 seconds. Shunta clinched the top spot by barely outrunning him by a mere 5 milliseconds. Hirado, with his recorded time of 16.4 seconds, was placed in the bottom third of the first drill. After the announcement of the result of the first phase, manager Nozomi approached Hirado, who was trying his best to avoid meeting eyes with Hiro. You should lose some weight, Hirado. You'll only waste your talent if you continue to remain like this. Manager Nozomi suggested in his gentle tone. I admit that you're talented. But now with the appearance of Hiro, talent alone won't secure your position on the team. Your position is in jeopardy. Nozomi continued. Hirado couldn't bring himself to look manager Nozomi in the eyes. Since every word said by manager Nozomi was a fact, he couldn't even bring himself to talk back anything. Thus, without saying anything, he kept on listening to the advice of manager with his chin lowered to his chest. I'm not threatening you, Hirado. So don't take it in a negative way. I just want the best of you. And as your coach, I can't watch you wither away without fulfilling your potential. So Hirado, give your best. Saying such in his gentle voice, Nozomi walked away from him. However, even till the end, Hirado couldn't bring himself to reply to Nozomi.